It's the Brad and John Show.
The Brad and John Show. Today's date is the 23rd of September. This is the B Block, the Bravo Block. We say that because a lot of people listen to the future on our sites, bjshow.co, which is the traditional podcast site, and bjshow.us, which is the semi-traditional podcast on the video on YouTube channel. John, are you ready? Are you ready, John?
It's time for Brad's Top 3.
It's time for Brad's Top 3.
It is. And for the ladies, we by contract, we have to let them do it twice. Ladies? Thank you so much, ladies. Okay, and we start with...
It's number 3.
Jimmy Kimmel. This is somewhat interesting because, you know, there are certain radio stations that play shows, and sometimes we're guilty of that as well, too, that play shows that don't make any sense anymore. I was driving around yesterday afternoon listening to 97.1, and instead of having Jimmy Fallon come on, they had another guy who was filling in for him, and that show normally airs from like 1 to 3 o'clock, and they time shift it so it's on 97.1. They only take an hour. It's from 6 to 7. And the guy's on there talking about, you know, there's no way Jimmy Kimmel's ever going to come back on ABC. And by that point in time, it was already out that Jimmy Kimmel's coming back tonight. The interesting part of this is not in St. Louis. Do you know this part of the story, John?
No, I don't. Why not?
Because Sinclair owns Channel 30, which is the ABC affiliate, and Sinclair still says, we don't care what ABC's doing. We're not running the show anymore.
Nah, and Sinclair is generally considered to be a conservative group, right?
Yes, and they have essentially said, I believe Nexstar has kissed and made up with Jimmy Kimmel and ABC and Disney and people like that, but not Sinclair. And they have essentially said, tough noogies, we don't want to run that show anymore. So it will be on other affiliates around the country, but not Sinclair ABC affiliates, which is sort of interesting. Now, the interesting part of it is I did hear someone on another station make an interesting comment, which I thought was really interesting. And I didn't even think about this. There's so many angles to this crazy story. The angle is almost all the networks, I think they all do now, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, all has their own streaming channels. They could have easily taken Jimmy Kimmel and stuck him on Disney Plus. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. That would have been a good idea.
Because of the fact, and what was interesting, here we go again, the said host who was filling in was talking about the fact, well, look at Howard Stern. He's on Sirius XM, and FCC has nothing to do with Sirius XM. Not true. The FCC does regulate Sirius XM because it is a transmitted signal that goes out in outer space and a satellite bounces back to the United States and received on people's car radios and home radios and stuff like that. But the difference is it's considered to be non-broadcast. That's how Howard Stern could, when he first, if you remember when he first started on Sirius XM, every third word of his mouth was either the F-bomb or the S-bomb.
Yeah. The idea was that you could curse on satellite radio.
Right. And it's the same difference is because of the fact that back when people had cable, you could watch pornographic material on your cable channel, but when you turned on Channel 5 on your cable channel, Karen Foss had to have all her clothes on. You know what I'm saying? You couldn't.
Yeah, I know. And Don Marsh didn't like that.
Don Marsh didn't like that. Okay, one other thing. And I'm thinking to myself, once upon a time, Howard Stern was an interesting character. Now I think he's just a caricature of himself. How's that? Do you like that little turn of phrase, Johns?
I love that, Brad. Yeah.
Okay. He comes out yesterday. Did you hear what Howard did yesterday? Which was
no, I didn't.
He canceled his Disney Plus subscription
because he's mad about Jimmy Kimmel?
Yes. I'm going
okay.
I heard this and I thought to myself, if that isn't the stupidest thing in the world, he canceled his Disney Plus. Like Disney Plus is going, and the crazy thing it is, he probably got it for free anyway. He probably didn't pay for it.
Yeah. I can't see him logging into an app and paying his bill.
Right. I don't think so either. And I'm going like, oh my God. Howard Stern can't see. God, that's so sad. You know the story with him is now supposedly he never leaves his house. You know this crazy story?
Yeah, because he's so scared of COVID, right?
Yes, he's like still hunkered down, and the people that come into his house have to go through like one of those chemical washes, where like you see it like at like nuclear plants where they get exposed to radiation. They have
they do. You got to stand underneath one of those showers. Right. Now I heard the theory, Brad, that he's actually, and that theory began today, according to my GPS clock at 7:31, that he was actually been possessed by Don Imus. So he went back to the 80s and all the bad things he would criticize Don Imus for. Don Imus, who I'm guessing left us probably 20 years ago or so, has like in kind of like an exorcism type of thing, has invaded the soul and the body of Howard Stern.
You know, I think Don Imus is still alive. Hold on a minute. Let me look here real quick.
Gosh, he'd have to be like your age now, Brad.
I don't think he's dead. Hold on a minute. Oh, no, he died. He died in 2019. Okay, let's. But they didn't have a big thing for him with, like, Charlie Kirk. What was wrong with that? Okay, ready for number 2?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's time for Brad's number 2. It's time for Brad's number 2.
Data centers back in the news. John, you heard this about the Armory being considered as a data center? Have you heard this crazy story?
I did, and according to the headline, Brad, well, I don't want to steal the headline. Tell us about it.
Well, the Armory building, which they redid into like a recreational kind of place. And my youngest son went there and actually had fun, but the only problem was, I can't remember, it wasn't his, but, you know, here we go. This is sad. They had this big thing with the Armory building, and it was like all sorts of games. And my son said he went with a bunch of his buddies, said they really had a good time. The only problem was when they came out, a bunch of the cars had been broken into. And the Armory...
and for folks who don't, I'm sorry to interrupt, Brad, but for folks who don't know, because I've never been there, but I too have friends that have attended work events there. Is that the building you can see from Highway 40?
Well, matter of fact, see from Highway 40, if you threw your Bud Light can out the window, you'd probably hit the roof.
You would hit it. Okay, and it's right off the overpass. So if you're traveling east, you could hit it with your Bud Light can.
Yes. Well, no.
Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, on the elevated section, when you're going, well, yeah, it's right there. It's right next to the
Well, that's still
Highway
disgusting.
40.
It's still in the city. And I mean, with all due respect to your son, if you go to the city, you deserve to have your car broken into, right?
Well, some people would say that. So they're talking about turning that into a data center. They're talking about putting $600 million into the thing. And already, oh my God, everybody's got their panties in a bind. Now, the interesting part of this is Steve Ellman is in the news because there's a little bit of problem in the Ellman household. Have you heard this problem?
No, I haven't heard this, Brad.
Well, Steve Ellman lives very close to where the proposed St. Charles data center was going to be, okay?
Oh, yeah, and his wife doesn't like it.
And
he said that on St. Louis Public Radio, didn't he?
His wife was not happy about that. And the interesting part of that is that Steve, being the guy that I appreciate, has a very reasoned approach to this and essentially says we shouldn't take a not in my backyard approach. We should take a reasoned approach to this and take a look at it and see the pluses and minuses of data centers, which I thought was a good way to look at it. Because
pretty reasonable. And his fallback idea was to turn the Family Arena into a data center.
He does not like the Family Arena, which is, I could never understand this. If you called up Dave Schatz and said, hey, Dave, we'll be able to pick up the Family Arena, put it on a series of barges, float it down the Missouri River, put it somewhere right off of Highway 100 between Washington and New Haven, would you want the Family Arena? Dave would say, yes, but I would charge an extra 5 cents per ticket, and every year the tickets will go up by 5 cents, and if people would not want their money. See, I don't understand why you got a really nice facility, which is now, 26, 27 years old, which still is in pretty decent shape, has tons of parking, and you and I have talked about this before. Anybody who's gone to any events at the convention center, the problem there is what, John?
It's parking.
It's parking, but at the Family
Arena. It's abysmal, but not at the Family Arena.
You've got a huge parking area, and the interesting part of this is that some people would say, well, the Family Arena, is that an example of something? I say, yes, it is. It used to be in the floodplain. They took it out of the floodplain. So there's another perfect example. Warren County people, listen up. You Warren County people won't let me do anything at my property at Crapville. How in the world can we build a 9,000-seat arena on the floodplain in St. Charles County, but yet I can't put my transmitter building back in the floodplain in Warren County? But that's a whole nother story. Okay, you ready for number 1?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that they're all full of shots.
They are.
Go ahead, Brad.
And now, big finish, Brad's number 1.
Big story. John had it yesterday. And after I read the story, I thought to myself, Isn't there something in one of the Shakespeare plays, Much Ado About Nothing, or something like that? Isn't that something in one of the Shakespeare plays?
Yeah, I think you quote that frequently, Brad.
Okay, I will say that 3 area politicians coming together to put their money and their power for a turning point chapter in the Francis Howell School District. Wasn't that the story yesterday?
Yeah, that was the story, Brad.
Okay, in my little list of things right here, I have synopsized what I'm going to talk about. And number 3, it just says Jimmy Kimmel. Number 2, it just says Armory. Number 1, it says cheapskate Republicans. After all this press, it turns out that Adam Schnelting, Ricky Schroeder, and Bob Onder are together donating $1,000 of their money. $1,000 of their money. Now, keep in mind, Ricky Schroeder lives on 42 acres in Defiance, has a fenced-in area, has guard towers. Down the street from him, you have Bob Onder, who also lives in the Augusta area, who has 55 acres and, has guard towers and
to be clear, you're making these numbers up just for sarcasm, but we get your point, Brad.
Razor wire and limousines pulling in and out, helicopter pads, not one but 2 helicopter landing pads for Bob Onder, and Adam Schnelting, who out in St. Charles County has a garage with 400 sports cars, including his Lamborghinis that he travels down I-70 in the left lane at 140 miles an hour. And if you dare get in front of him on the left lane when he's going to Jefferson City in his Lamborghini doing 140 miles an hour, he's going to pass a law against you, which is going to make you break rocks at the Missouri State Penitentiary for the next 10 years. With those 3 dudes, they can only come up with $1,000, John? $1,000?
Yeah, so let's talk about this, Brad. It seems like what you're doing now is you're looking at 3 people that are members of the Freedom Caucus, a group that you routinely mock.
Is that what it is, the Freedom Caucus?
And you dislike, you have an imaginary beef with Nick Schroeder. Bob Onder comes on the show, and you ask him how proud his parents must be of his entire family and his siblings. But then as soon as you get off the air, you criticize him. And then you don't have a relationship with Adam Schnelting. But what we have here, Brad, is what difference would it make if a group isn't formed yet? That would be like me giving you 10 grand and saying, Brad, I know you'll do something with this money and invest it in a radio station and do something productive, and then expecting something to happen. So if they gave 10 grand to create Turning Point USA chapters and the groups don't even exist, how foolish would it be for them to write a big check to a group that has no plan yet and no organization?
But John,
so what Bob and Nick and Adam are doing is saying, hey, here's a little bit of seed money to write your constitution, to print $100 worth of materials per school for recruitment, and then go from there. They never said this is going to fund massive campaigns out here.
John, I can't believe you're saying that because of the fact these are all 3 politicians. And first off, they would hire a consulting firm. They would hire what's the name of your guy? What's the big guy that you talk about all the time? Who's like the number one?
I don't know. You got to think about it, Brad. You got to access your short-term memory.
Okay, but they would hire a consulting group and essentially say, hey, we're thinking about trying to help some Turning Point USA chapters be formed in the Francis Howell School District, and then they would send this money, a big check, like a 6-figure check to some consulting firm or some lobbying firm in Jefferson City. Then they would do a zoning report to make sure that people in St. Charles wouldn't say, Turning Point, we don't want that Turning Point organization near us. There could be fumes coming out of the room. There could be a lot of electricity. There could be a lot of water being used. And then we would have to have the legislature go into special session and say, okay, should we have a Turning Point USA chapter in Francis Howell School District? And Keogh would come out of his hiding place and say,
You're trying to make as many errors as possible. I love this, Brad.
Keogh would come out of his hiding place and go, oh my God, the sunlight's so bright. What am I doing outside of my little cubby hole at Jefferson City? See, that's the way it works, John. You just don't get the way it works.
I know. I somehow missed all that flawless logic there. I once did a show with a man named Brad Hildebrand who would say, if I discovered the cure to cancer, the Washington Missourian wouldn't even print it. They wouldn't even give me any credit for it. And on the flip side, Brad, if Bob Onder and Nick Schroer and Adam Schnelting and Bill Eigel came out with a cure for cancer, or did a gracious act in giving a little bit of seed money to a conservative group, Brad Hildebrand, based on who they are, simply would never give them credit. And that's where we are today, Brad.
Not true, John, because of the fact that I would give them credit for that. But the problem I have is, and I'm a born again American, John. That's what I am now. I look at this crap and I look at the fact that, like, okay, here we go again. This guy's a liberal conservative. This
And
guy's
what are you, Brad?
I'm an American.
Oh, God bless Crapville.
You know what's interesting? The more I do this, the more I get people who are going like, this happened in the last week.
Oh, I bet 7 people texted you and said, "I can't believe it, Brad. Now I'm an American too."
No, but when I say to them, the interesting thing is when you get into a situation where they go like, well, hold on a minute, aren't you? Yeah, I've heard you on the radio. Aren't you a conservative? No, I'm an American.
Nobody has ever said that to you, because unless they go through my website, they've never heard you on the radio, Brad. It's 7:42. We got a phone call in 3 minutes. Let's get to it.
That's right. Okay, but here's the ground rules. Okay. I told him 7:45. We'll have a couple minutes for commercials here. Before we go to the phone call, I do want you to synopsize this so this makes sense, okay?
Yeah, go. Let's go.
Okay.